Good morning. Today is Tuesday, April 1st, 2025. On October 7, 2023, Meni Godard was kidnapped from Kibbutz Be'eri, and he was murdered that day. But since that time, Hamas has held on to his body. There's been no burial, obviously. And this past Shabbos, on Saturday, it was announced that the Israeli army attempted and failed to recover this body of Meni Godard. This was confirmed by the Israeli army and by the Shin Bet security services. They said the forces found and retrieved material belonging to Meni Godard. It's not clear to us exactly what that refers to, though his body is still held in the Gaza Strip. When that information was public, Bar Godard, his daughter, put out the following statement on behalf of the Godard family. We, the Godard family, demand that no soldier's life be put to risk to recover our father's body. We will not allow another family to enter the circle of mourning in an attempt to bring him back. We demand that he and all the other hostages be brought back in a negotiated deal. I certainly understand that sentiment, and I take now no position on this demand, but I do want to point out the following. The terror groups in Gaza released 30 hostages between January and March of this year. 20 Israeli citizens, 5 soldiers, 5 Thai nationals, and the bodies of 8 slain Israeli captives. So that's what happened during January and March. Currently, these terror groups in the Gaza Strip still hold 59 hostages. 58 of them were among the 251 abducted by Hamas on October 7th. And they include the bodies of at least 35 confirmed dead by the IDF. Now, of course, we pray for the return of all the hostages, but we have now entered a new phase which hopefully includes the return of bodies. And the return of bodies is somewhat different than the return of living hostages, because the return of bodies brings with it new pain and also new comfort. And it is important that we see and recognize and appreciate both. The return of these precious bodies strikes us with, in the words of Rachel Sharansky Danziger, the finality and totality of death. The abyss that death opens in the fabric of reality, the impossibility of fixing it. And it is so bitter. And there is another perspective, and that is, with the return of bodies comes the mitzvah, the commandment of burial. I've told you in the past stories about Rabbi Aryeh Levin. Rabbi Aryeh Levin was an incredible person decades ago, lived in Jerusalem, a very simple, humble man. He was known as the father of the prisoners because he used to visit members of the Jewish underground imprisoned in the Russian compound during the British Mandate. He was known as the Tzaddik of Jerusalem for his efforts on behalf of the poor and the sick. And one time he told a grieving mother whose son's body had been left behind in war, he said, "We are never truly at peace until all our children are home." And his words carry the weight of our tradition. Because remember from the Torah just a number of weeks ago in the story of Exodus, that Moshe carried the bones of Yosef from Egypt back to be buried in Israel. And that is today Israel's commitment to bringing every soldier home. And that is our obligation today to those still being held in Gaza, both the living and the murdered. Because just as a family is not whole when even one child is missing, our people are not whole while our brothers and sisters remain in captivity, whether alive or dead. And Rabbi Dan Moskovitz points out this passage in the narrative of Exodus is very powerful because Yosef, before he died, this is at the end of the book of Bereshit, makes his children and his descendants take an oath that when the time comes for them to be redeemed and brought back to Israel by God, that they will take his bones. And even though Yosef was the second most important in Egypt, and he had died hundreds of years earlier, and he was revered in Egypt, he never saw it as his home. And he made his family promise that when the redemption came, when God remembered his people, they would take his remains with him to be laid to rest in the land, that was truly his. And it's a striking moment because as we are going to re-experience in just a couple of weeks at the Pesach Seder, the Jewish people were leaving Egypt in haste. B'vahilu yatzanu mimitzrayim. We left in haste, barely grabbing their own essentials. They didn't even have time to let the dough rise into bread. And yet Moshe did not forget the bones of Yosef. Redemption would have been incomplete if Yosef were left behind. No matter how long he had been gone, no matter how deep the exile, bringing him home was an obligation that could not be forsaken. We are living in a time of deep anguish. It's not new to our people, but it is new to our younger generation of Jews, certainly to my generation. And we find ourselves still waiting for redemption. Since October 7th, we have been haunted by the kidnapping of so many of our people, some of whom were brutally murdered and whose bodies remain in captivity in Gaza. And their return is not only a political demand, and I'm not getting involved to any of the political discussions, but it is a sacred obligation one way or another. Their souls cry out to us, just as Yosef's bones cried out to Moshe. In our tradition, the Jewish tradition, there is a very important concept called kavod hamet, honoring the dead. It is one of the greatest mitzvos. To honor the dead is a mitzvah that cannot be repaid. We refer to it as chesed shel emes. It is a kindness of truth because it is done purely for the sake of the kindness, not for any reward. The person you're doing it for can never thank you. A pure act of love and respect. We do not abandon our dead, even when it is painful, even when it seems impossible. We bring them home. And Rachel Sharansky Danziger adds, when the Torah demands that we take care of the dead, it tells us how to act when we encounter life's finality. It doesn't give us time to sink into shock, into passivity. Since it demands we act at once to care for the bodies before us. Neither does it ask us to repress death or to ignore it, since we must act in the very shadow of death itself as we care for the bodies of the ones we love. And through these actions, we reaffirm that we belong to the realm of the living. We reaffirm that our actions have meaning even in the presence of death. We confront the abyss of loss in loving kindness, in the sort of behavior that is the blood flow of society, humanity, and life. Daniel Sharabi survived the massacre at the Nova Music Festival on October 7, 2023. Since October 7th, Daniel Sharabi has devoted himself to caring for others. Together with his brother and some friends, he founded an organization called A Future for the Survivors and the Wounded, and he has flown all over the world to secure donations and to raise awareness. And listen, please, carefully to what he said. This, he said, is how he copes. I can't sit still for even a minute. I can't let the difficult thoughts in because you'll never get out of them. The moment you're doing something for someone else, it's healing. Revenge won't help me. For all the evil they did to us, we will do many times as much good. Both are true at this moment. The dark and the light. The finality of death with the return of bodies, and the ability for us, the opportunity for us to turn to the mitzvah of burial, to humanity, to kindness. Both are true. The pain and the comfort. Both must be faced and experienced, and neither can be emphasized at the expense of the other. I pray that we can embrace the living and stand by the side of all of the fallen, and that we can say farewell to them properly and begin the journey towards healing that is rooted in kindness. My friends, I wish you a good day, and I look forward to seeing you soon in person.